We are back on Tier Maker to do another tier list for the January 2022, the first tier list of 2022. So as you can see, I went back to adding the tier 1.5. Basically, it's kind of like in the middle between tier 1 and 2, but obviously it's because it's in between tier 1 and tier 2. And here I have what I believe are like the best decks, ones I've also gotten tops. Now, I do know on my November tier list, it definitely didn't do too well. So I've been wanting to try to make it as best as I could. By trying to get top results and all that to make it as consistent or at least as accurate as I could possibly get it. And then I found the perfect way to make sure it's as accurate as possible. Hello? Do you think you can give me a hand? So I looked at tournament results and I also got a little bit of input from a competitive player, because my competitive knowledge doesn't go past the locals. And I believe I was able to get the most accurate tier list I could probably get. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Bee Troopers. That's going to go down in competitive. You know, I was hoping that they would be doing more now, but they just really have just kind of fallen off, unfortunately. Adding this to kind of the same area, hasn't really been doing a whole lot. It's easy, the board it makes is easy to break. I broke it with pure Lyrilusk. Tri-Brigade and Lyrilusk, obviously tier 1. Definitely one of the best decks in the format. But even if you want to go pure for each one, they're still very powerful on their own, and together they're just insane. You got cards like Harpy's Featherstorm, the Omen, Revolt. You just got so many options with this deck. This deck was powerful even before the new Lyrilusk cards, and now that they're out, it just makes it even better. Next, Dragon Link. This is actually going to go in tier 1.5. Ever since the new support came out, it has been seeing a little bit of a resurgence. Still not enough to push it up into tier 1, because between Dragon Link and Lyrilusk Tri-Brigade, obviously the Lyrilusk Tri-Brigade is far better. Cyber Dragon. Sorry all you Cyber Dragon fans, but even if I were to put it against stuff like Bee Troopers and Adagnister, it just doesn't quite... It just can't quite compete with those decks. Guru. I'm actually going to put this one in competitive. Originally, I had this in everything else, but I feel like it's slightly above that, because if I pair Guru and Cyber Dragon, Guru could just make so much, just do so much good stuff. And obviously with the new Heavenly something, I can't remember the name of the card. It came on Burst of Destiny and it's good with traps. Grand Maju. Also competitive. You never know when a Grand Maju might sneak up on you. It's definitely a deck that you do want to be mindful of, because it can just change games and finish games out very easily. It's a deck that can... I'd say it's definitely the best OTK deck, because of how big that Grand Maju can get. And it's definitely a deck that's not going to be on a lot of people's radars, so you can steal some wins with it. Salamangreats. I'm going to put this in Rogue. I think I had them in tier 2 last time. They have been doing not quite as good, but they're still, they're still around. It's still a deck you will probably see. I really hope that it does get them in the upcoming ban list. It gets them more help. Whether it be Mirage Salio to 3, Circle or Gazelle to 2, or even 3. I'd really like to see them try to peel more Salamangreat stuff off, because Salamangreats, I kind of view it the same as Sword Soul, because more so the deck is just... It's not good because of one singular card. It's more or less that it just is more consistent, and it's not like Sky Strikers where obviously you have Engage, which is really broken. Thunder Dragons, you'd have the Colossus. Phantom Knights, you got Fog Blade, which is probably one of the most powerful cards in that deck. Like, it doesn't have a singular broken card. It's just a bunch of really good cards together, more or less. Now for the deck that I hate the most. I am so sick of this deck. I was talking with a friend of mine, and we were just talking about how much we hate Invoked. Like, play something else. For crying out loud. It's been, what, like 2-3 years? Move on from it. Like, I really wish they would hit it. Like, they don't have to hit the Dogmatica. Just hit Shaddolls or Invoked, or at least do something. Like, I just stopped putting Magical Meltdown in my prediction videos because, let's just face it, they're never going to hit it. We're just going to have to deal with this deck for until the end of times. And considering it's a competitive deck, one of the best in the format, they're not going to hit it. Like, I'd rather even go against a tier 0 deck than go against Shaddolls. Because for me, I enjoy playing against a variety of decks. Like, let's say in my tournaments, if I go to a tournament and my matchups are Phantom Knights, Sky Strikers, Sword Soul, and Tri-Brigade. And those are the 4 decks I face. I got no problems because I want to get a variety of decks. It's not the same thing every time. Which is how it is with this deck. Like, I remember one of my last tournaments, I faced off against it twice. I feel like I could make a whole video just talking about how much I hate this deck. But let's move on to Sky Striker 8, another tier 1.5, kind of like borderline tier 1. Sky Striker with the Phoenix and Forge have definitely kind of been like a match made in heaven. And it's a deck that's only going to get stronger because it's going to have a new card coming out, which is basically a Kaiju. Ain't that fun. Definitely a deck I'm really excited to see how it's going to go moving forward. And it's definitely something you're going to have to keep out. The one thing with Sky Strikers is it's not the easiest deck to play. And depending on its matchups, because the only reason why I wouldn't put it higher is because one of the other competitive decks really is a really good matchup for Sky Strikers, which we will get to further down. Phantom Knights. Definitely put it at like a tier, definitely like a high tier 1.5. It's definitely a deck that's been making a presence. However, I feel like its presence is kind of dwindling a little bit. But when the new archetype Brave comes out, it's usually gonna move up. Dinos. Rogue. You may see a Dino player here and there because people really love Dinos. And ever since they hit Miscellaneous Source, this deck just hasn't really been able to hang with the top competitive decks quite as well, which I didn't really get why they hit Miscellaneous Source, because even when Miscellaneous Source was at 3, was Dinos a tier 1 deck? No. It wasn't. It was maybe a tier 2, but I just didn't think that was enough justifying hitting Miscellaneous Source. But with Miscellaneous Source back at 1, it's just there, more or less. Sharks. The right hand and the left hand shark definitely have boosted the shark strategy, and it's going to be getting an even bigger boost in the legendary duelist. I think it's attack from the deep, if I'm correct. which I'm really excited because I think Sharks is a pretty fun deck. And honestly, I'm really going to be enjoying Yu-Gi-Oh! Next year because a lot of decks I personally enjoy and just think are a lot of fun are getting new support. Like Marine Cess is another deck I like. It's getting support. Like Reddit Plants, that's getting support. Like there's just so much cool stuff coming out next year. Definitely makes, or I guess not next year, this year. But it just makes me really excited. Heroes. It just, I think it got like a top, but it just doesn't really have enough juice to, I say, really go to toe to toe with stuff like B Troopers, Guru, or Grand Manchu. Live Twins. I'm putting it in competitive for right now. It's definitely got the potential because it has been getting tops here and there, and it's definitely something you need to keep an eye on. But I feel like Salamangreat and Dynalogy are more likely to go against rather than the Live Twins. Live Twins can definitely build some interesting boards. Obviously, that Trouble Sunny really did help with the deck, and as I've seen some people putting Enemy Controller in the deck as well, which is definitely a very nice tech. But I feel like they're still like missing one thing. It's very close. It just needs a little bit more porch. Kind of like in the similar way as like Dolce, where I think like all it really needs is maybe like one good card, and it will be up here with these decks. Drytron. Kind of like tier 1.5. Drytron was tier 1, but it's just been kind of going down a little bit more. That doesn't mean that it's not doing anything, because obviously it's still a tier 1.5, but I feel like Drytron has just become a little bit more fragile, and you gotta play it in a very specific way. And obviously it does kind of struggle more or less against Tri-Brigade. Speedroids. Again, everything else, sadly. Virtual World, tier 2. I think Virtual World's actually got like 2 tops in a recent event, so it's definitely a deck that you're going to have to be keeping an eye out, and it may be getting stronger with the next ban list if Emergency Teleport does come back to 3. I'm not really too sure if it will come back to 3, but either way, Virtual World is definitely a deck that's been you're going to see in top cuts, and it's definitely one you're going to have to keep an eye on. Eldritch, again, another tier 2 deck. This is the deck I've seen kind of like dip in and out of the format from here and there. Usually hangs out around the tier 2 roguish, maybe occasionally making its way up to tier 1.5. Of course, Eldritch has just been a very good deck. Unfortunately, it does have the same problem as most trap decks. But the one cool thing is that Eldritch is just, I guess, a pretty splashable card. Like I've seen Invoked Eldritch, there's obviously the Pop Extravaganza Eldritch, or Zombie Eldritch. Like there's just so many ways to play Eldritch, which is definitely what allows it to stay in like that tier 2-ish area. No Smoke Grenade, no problem. Although it's still a competitive deck. Infernoble's actually, no, it's Smart Bro. Infernoble's has actually been a bit of a surprise because it's actually been getting some tops. So it's definitely a deck that's kind of making a bit of a resurgence. I'd definitely say on the roguish level it's probably below Salamangreat's. But it's definitely a deck that you're going to need to keep an eye out. Honestly, this was a deck that wasn't even on my radar until I heard that it was actually getting some tops. Next, Madolche. I'm going to put this in the competitive. More like a... Madolche is a very interesting deck. I would love to put it up higher, but it just hasn't really been getting enough tops, and in terms of strength, it just can't quite compete with these top decks, unfortunately. It's a deck that definitely has a lot of potential, but so far it's not quite reaching that potential. I feel like it's a deck that basically, much like Live Twins, just needs like one more card, and it's going to be a very competitive deck. Altergeist. This one's a bit harder to kind of tell. I'm definitely putting this one in like a high competitive. More so just because I feel like it's much stronger than these decks, but when it comes down to like Infernobles, Salamangreats, it does have a few difficulties, which obviously it being a trap deck. Now, this one, Altergeist was kind of like hard to kind of really place because it got some new support, but I'm not quite too familiar with it. I haven't really played around with that deck at all since the new support came out, so I honestly don't even know what Pukari does or the feature alert. Sorry. But this is obviously a deck with competitive potential. It always has been. Like every once in a while, it'll sneak its head into a top cut. But for right now, I'd say it's more competitive than it is rogue. Sword Soul, obvious tier 1. Sword Soul, I'd definitely say, is becoming one of the best decks of the format alongside Leerless Tri-Brigade. Usually in top cuts, Leerless Tri-Brigade and Sword Soul are the ones you'll often see most, along with like maybe the Shaddoll, Dogmatica, Invoked, sadly. And it's definitely one of the decks you're going to have to keep an eye out, because you definitely will see it at tournaments. Prank Kids, more of a rogue level for right now, but once the new Brave comes out, much like Phantom Knights, watch out for this deck. It honestly kind of makes me wonder, are they going to hit the deck before it comes out? Like, are they going to ban Meow Meow Mew before it comes out? I don't know. I don't think they will, but you know, I've seen stranger things. Adamantipator. Adamantipator's been kind of a surprise rogue deck. It's been kind of starting to make a small resurgence, and it's definitely a deck you're going to want to be paying attention for. The one downside I'd say with like Adamantipator and why it's not able to go much higher, obviously, the Block Dragon got banned. And additionally, it's kind of a bit of a gamble deck because you're excavating, and it's kind of like Morphtronics in a way, to where if you're lucky and you draw into the card you want, that's pretty cool. But if you don't, it's going to become a lot harder. Numeron. Surprisingly, this actually got a couple tops, but I still don't think it's anything to write home about. Fortunately, like, honestly, I'm kind of tempted to just put it in everything else, because I feel like it's definitely a very competitive deck. But can it beat decks like Altergeist, Speed Trooper, Life Twins? I don't think it can. Mystic Mine. Everything else. It has gotten a couple tops, unfortunately. I hate that people are making this other deck. You know, maybe it should become tier 1, just so that they ban the card. Like, personally, Mystic Mine, I don't really have a problem with the card itself, because it can be used in a lot of interesting ways. Like, you play Sky Strikers, True Dracos, it could just be a nice stun card. And it will definitely force out a negate. But Mystic Mine as a deck is something I definitely don't like, because it's not fun to play with. It just does not. I'm struggling with the word. It does not create a fun competitive environment. But as like an individual card, I think it's fine. But as a deck, I just don't like it. Floowandereeze, aka my deck for format. 2/2. This is definitely a deck I could probably talk about more so than any other deck, because this is the deck that I've actually been playing. And it definitely is a very powerful deck that you do want to keep your eyes out, as it's been seeing competitive play and it has been getting tops. Obviously, it's not as good as like Sword Soul or those Tri-Brigade, even though it can beat those decks, and I have. One really cool thing about the Floowandereeze is how it just avoids so many cards. Like for example, you can play around Nibiru, as well as you can also play around Ash in a way as well. Because the one cool thing, if you have the field spell, the way the field spell is worded, it can't be ashed, which is really cool. The one weakness of this deck is that, much I'd say kind of like Prank Kids, if you disrupt the first or second summon, this deck is going to struggle a bit more, and that's basically why it's still a tier 2. Because when you normal summon the Rabina, if you negate the Rabina's effect, and you don't have the map, basically you're just ending your turn right there. So that is the one downside. On the plus side, stuff like a Vanity's Roller has no effect on this deck whatsoever because we don't special summon at all. Because the Floowandereeze, every time their effect resolves, it gives you an extra normal summon. So even if you, like let's say, I normal summon a Rabina and then you do something to destroy the Rabina, its effect still goes off, which allows me to get another normal summon and to just keep on continuing. And in Floowandereeze, stuff like Barrier Statue, that's searchable. That's obviously got the M-Pen, which is a floodgate. Then you can also run stuff like Miss Valley, Apex Avion, Ryza, or as I also run the Dark Morph. It's just got so many cool options at its disposal, but it's just got that one first summon that can be a little bit of a glass cannon. And this is more of a pure Burning Abyss, not like a Phantom Knight's Burning Abyss, but more like a Trap Stun kind of Burning Abyss. That one's, I'd say it's more on the competitive. It's definitely been getting some top cuts, surprisingly, but not enough to really warrant putting it higher. And so that's my January 2022 tier list. Let me know, what do you think? Do you agree with this list? Is there anything you would potentially change? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video I make. Bye.